All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm assuming everybody can hear me. Let's do a quick sound check. If anybody in chat can say something. Yes, perfect. There you go. Nothing. Thanks, Jimmy. Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. So greetings again from my home here in Austin, Texas, live music capital of the world, and essentially my office for the foreseeable future. So welcome again to our session here on how to build and extend PWA with PWA Studio here at Adobe Developers Live. My name is Erway. I'm the Senior Manager for Product Management for our merchant and shopping experiences. I'm joined here today by Jimmy Sanford, who is our lead developer for PWA Studio. Jimmy, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey everyone. Like Eric said, I am Jimmy Sanford. I am a front-end developer here at Magento, and I am the lead on PWA Studio. So I will be doing a demo in a little bit.
Great, thanks, Jimmy. So today we're going to cover the latest on all things headless, but really PWA Studio, what it means for developers, and how it starts to come together with Magento 2.4. So for those who have not been familiar with PWA Studio, essentially it's a set of development tools to build, optimize, and deploy progressive web apps on top of Magento 2. We've been working on this. Team is working extremely hard with the community over the past 2 years, and these standards help merchants, partners, and developers create superior, lightning-fast experiences with lower total cost and complexity, especially on mobile, but also for desktop. So in the next couple of minutes, we're going to share the latest community and adoption numbers for PWA Studio. We're going to talk a little bit about some highlights from Magento 2.4, and then our product roadmap. Then I'll stop talking, I promise, and I'll hand it over to Jimmy, who's going to walk us through the demo itself, some of the new concepts around extensibility and internationalization with PWA Studio. And at the end, we'll show you how to get started. We have a lot of resources to help you on your way. And we'll make sure we save some time at the end for questions. If that's not enough, we've got a couple folks here from the team and the community here in chat for any questions you might have, as well as at least 2 Dev Exchange sessions shortly after this on PWA Studio itself, but also security with Telesh. So looking forward to another great session. And again, let us know how we can help. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the numbers themselves between what the community has done to date and the adoption numbers for PWA Studio. As of today, there are at least 30 known stores built with PWA Studio according to our own sources, but also built with. Conservatively, we're also seeing about 200% improved performance as reported, but also higher efficiency with as much as 5 times less resources needed, which is pretty impressive. As a result, though, merchants are starting to see higher conversion and revenue along the way. In addition to that, we have over 15 extensions and themes that are available via third-party marketplaces for PWA Studio. To date, we're hoping to see even more of them as we start to unleash these into the marketplace. In addition to that, one of the things that I think that really empowers us every single day is the community. As Jason said earlier today, the power of community is everything. And so we talk to regularly over 2,000 members in our Magento community each and every day. And they have helped from day one shape the product, give us feedback, and also allow us to do this right. In addition to that, we've had over 120 contributors to date to the project, and then we're led by 2 amazing community maintainers in both Jordan and Lars, who are often the first person to respond with any questions on how to get started, but have also provided some significant contribution as well. We couldn't be happier about the progress we've made to date, and I think these numbers start to show that. So let's talk a little bit about Magento 2.4. Magento 2.4 is a huge release for the team. As you see here on the left, we started introducing the new concept around the Venia refresh, both in desktop and mobile form. But beyond that, we've introduced a series of components, which you'll start to see here in the demo. On the right is the latest demo from Venia itself. This is what's in the development branch today. And you'll start to see a lot more depth in what is a traditional shopping experience, both online and offline, and out-of-the-box capabilities that we're striving for by the end of the year today. We'll go through from a product roadmap standpoint on what we have and what we have remaining. But we're really excited about this, and of course, this is all built upon the coverage that comes by way of GraphQL with each and every release. So we're incredibly excited about that. And again, the team has made tremendous progress, all of course, with not only contribution, but feedback from the Magento community. Another interesting point, though, we've talked a little bit about the components themselves, but one of the stories that we don't talk a lot about enough that I thought would be really interesting for this particular event is how our work itself and how our components have made their way into some key launches within the AEM world. As you see here on the left, TiVo itself launched several months ago and was able to put together a really amazing shopping experience in just 4 months, using a lot of the components that you'll see in PW today. This headless approach enabled TiVo, again, to launch with partner bounties, these great experiences, but taking advantage of shopping cart and then some key aspects of the product details page that starts to shape what essentially is becoming a shared component library between the two. This is a really exciting story that doesn't get a lot of, probably doesn't get a lot of traction. And we've got a handful of launches that are already out in the marketplace that, that are starting to, that are live today that start to show this capability. So we talked a little bit about Magento 2.4. For those who aren't familiar, PWA Studio, although an independent project with independent release cycles, is pretty tied to the cadence of the Magento platform today in terms of our releases. In the future, we'll look to some independence around that, but the reality is we stay close to that from a compatibility standpoint. Version 7 of PWA Studio was a big win for the team. As you'll see here in the demo, we've got some key concepts around extensibility, key experiences like cart and checkout that are fully developed, landing pages powered by Page Builder, caching and performance improvements, and a tremendous amount of project tutorials by way of the community, but also our incredible DevDocs team. So again, really rounding the core on these key experiences. We know that these are questions that you often ask with regard to kind of where is Venia today, where is PWA today, and we made a lot of good progress since the very beginning of the project with the most recent release in July. But our work is not done. So next month, we're going to be launching PWA Studio 8. And what it seems to be a fairly conservative feature list, it really represents over 100 quality and performance updates to date. There's a lot of things you'll see, some of which you'll see here in the demo shortly, around the upgrade to Apollo Client 3, an updated mini cart for Venia, so that complements what we already did around cart and checkout, and an additional styling and style guide for Venia. We continue again to make progress towards what eventually will become a much more turnkey storefront and the future front-end platform for Magento. But before I turn it over to Jimmy, what I want to do is talk a little bit about the roadmap itself. One of the things that we're just as proud of is how we do things as much as what we've done. The team has made tremendous progress to date. In the longer form of this discussion, we would be able to go through each and every release since we initially launched back with Magento 2.3. But this is not the talk. What we do, though, is have a very transparent backlog, combining the things that are in progress, the items that are upcoming in our backlog, and our planning that happens and goes through 2021. And if you participate regularly in our Slack channels, and if you join our regular Friday calls, we're pretty open about this. You'll see a lot of the work that is debuting as part of PWA Studio 8 next month. Key areas like mini cart refactor are going to be part of that. GraphQL support, again, there's coverage that's happening, as Nishant talked about earlier today, in each and every release. And additional Venia styling. Again, we've, with the help of the UX team and a lot of research that was done with actual merchants and shoppers, we started to round out some of the corners there where we originally started about 2 years ago, and we started to bring that to life. But again, our work is not done. And with the help of the community, we're looking for areas to accelerate. In our backlog, we've got key areas like Mega Menu, we've got some offline enhancements, we have accessibility, performance, and other improvements that we're going to continue to bake in through the remainder of the year. And we're actively working on areas like My Account, which is a high priority for the team. Once you start to see these come together, you realize there's really never been a better time to get started with PWA Studio. And you'll start to see some of the examples, again, with the 30 or so stores that we've launched to date, but built by way of the community, and also key partners along the way. Next year, we'll focus on additional integrations. Some of them will include payments, additional functionality around Venia itself, and of course, B2B, which is the next area for us. We've already got some exciting UX concepts underway from the team that we're continuing to see. So again, our work here is not yet done. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jimmy, who's going to walk us through a demo of the latest PWA Studio and some of the key concepts that we talked about from a product roadmap standpoint.
Thanks, Eric. Start sharing my screen now. And there we go. You can all see my screen now. Cool. So like Eric said, ordinarily, what we would be doing at an event like this is giving some sort of introduction to PWA Studio, right? We would be introducing you to what it is, how it works, why we're doing it, how you can get started. But what we thought we would do this time is demonstrate some of the cool things that we've added to the project recently, because these are things that people have been asking for a long time. We don't have that much time, so I'm going to kind of go through these topics lightly, right? But they are very deep topics, and a lot of thought goes into them. So if you're looking for more of a deep dive into any of the things you see here, I suggest you attend the follow-up session where we have a dev exchange, or reach out to us on Slack, or through or directly through GitHub. So the first of those that's worth talking about here is extension. So for a long time, we've wanted to have an extension model that was available to people so that they could write code that didn't involve overwriting code in our code base, but that lived in their own package, and so that they could add it and have it basically modify the code that we've provided. That's built on two systems. The first is scaffolding, which is how you create a React application of your own that imports our code and renders it. And then you can add your own code on top of it within your own scaffolded project. And the second is a system of extension that is opening up points within our code for you to tap into or intercept and modify them directly. So our esteemed tech writer, James Kalkabin, put together a workbook that helps you go through this, everything from running the scaffolding tool to a couple of exercises on how to add some basic stuff that you can do with extension, all the way into a more complicated example. We're going to walk through that really quickly, but we're actually going to skip straight to a code sandbox that is a scaffolded application. So this is a package that was created by the command line tool. And as you can see here in the package.json, imports the PWA Studio code as dependencies. So Venia, Upward, Paragon, Page Builder, etc. This is our code. It's imported externally. And then everything here we see on the left, this is what would be your code. And we're going to come from here, and we're going to make use of the first extension point available. And my session just expired, so we're going to refresh it. But while that is rebuilding, what we're going to do is we are going to use the first extension point, which is routes. You can use this extension point to add your own route with its own page. Now we're going to step through that really quickly. There are two main pieces to that. One is the targets. Code sandbox. Please start. There you go. So one of them is going to be, we're going to create a targets directory here. It's going to have a local intercept JavaScript file. And this is where we're going to tap into the extension system. And then the next one is going to be component, which is going to be a standard React component. We're going to call this greeting page. And we're going to define it in this file. So in the local intercept, we're going to define this in the node style as a function that receives a targets object. The way this works is that we're going to grab the targets of one of the Venia application, one of the Venia packages here, Venia UI, and we're going to tap into the routes. As you can see here, we're going to tap into the routes object and we're going to push a new route onto it. So from this intercept is going to give us all of the routes in the application as an array, and we can push a new route onto it. So we just need to provide it a name and a pattern. Those of you familiar with React Router will know the syntax. And a path to our component, which is going to be in the components folder, the greeting page. And that's going to be our component. So just like that, we're going to have an example of the extension. So then when we come over here, we just need to create a standard React component. And export it. And what we can do from here is we have access to the same libraries that are available in the rest of Venia. So we can say and we'll pull that from the route. So then the last piece of wiring that we have to do, so we come back into our package.json file here. We're going to add a new line here. Add a PWA Studio property to our package.json. Which has a targets and an intercept. And this is just going to point toward that local intercept file that we created earlier. And then since we're in Code Sandbox, we'll just restart the server. And allow that to run. So in this way, we've created our own code, our own components, and used the target system to tap into the routes, push a new route on them. If we come over to the code base, we can see that this is how Page Builder is implemented, and that this is actually how Venia UI's routes themselves are implemented. So the routes that we have provided in the application, such as cart and checkout, are added through this same pattern. If we come back here, we should be able to see this in action now. And there we are. So the workbook material, which may be available through our dev docs, will also teach you how to do much more complicated things than this. But of course, once you're within this file, this page can be anything you want. So this is only the simplest example, right? To look at another feature that we've just added to Venia, that would be internationalization. So within the app like this, there are all kinds of hard-coded strings in addition to the data that we get back from Magento. So Magento is going to send us things like product names and product prices, which are all going to be associated with the store view. But there's also lots of hard-coded strings, such as the search and sign in and all of the button text, etc. So for a while, we've needed a way to provide translations for these. And we've just recently, with the help of the page builder team, added that functionality to the app. So as you can see, there are going to still be some strings that have not been translated yet, because we haven't gone through the entire application, every string. But the system is there and the system works, and we're going to look at a little bit of how that works. If you're familiar with translation in Magento, it should feel very familiar. So essentially, within the application, we changed the hard-coded strings to use a new component here called formatted message. And formatted message is going to take an ID and a fallback message. And that ID is going to link back to a JSON file. We can see more on this API here from the library we're using, which is React-INTL. It gives us both components, which we can render, that give us this very simple API for how to pass IDs to it, or an imperative API here, where we can call the useINTL hook to get a format message function, which works the same way. So if we come into our Venia folder, you can see here we have all of the default strings in the application, enus.json, separated out by all of the different sections in the app, along with the default English string. And then when we come over here to the French version, here we have the translated strings. And then when we go to our env, we can do this, we can switch between these in one of two different ways. The first way is we can provide a store view code here in our env file. That's going to allow us to essentially hard code it. And the other way, which is currently in development, we have PRs up, will give us a store switcher so that you can switch between these on the fly. Essentially what happens is the JSON files you're seeing here are input into context and made available to the entire tree. So all it takes is one switch, the entire context changes, and a new JSON file is loaded. And then to take one more look at another thing, we're going to dive into the cache. So if you're familiar with PWA technology, you know that we have a service worker that caches queries so that when we issue the same query to the same endpoint, the service worker can cache the result of that query. But we have another level of caching that goes on in the client itself, which is provided by our GraphQL client, Apollo. This is stored in local storage by Apollo under the domain of your store. You can see this here under Apollo Cache Persist. And what actually happens when we issue a GraphQL query, I can maximize this so everyone can see a little better. What actually happens when you issue a GraphQL query is all of the different nodes that you receive, all of the different fields on all of the different objects, are normalized by Apollo and inserted into the cache by ID. What this does is that every time we make another query and GraphQL realizes that the data set is available in its cache, it short circuits and simply loads that data from cache. As a result, it's really important that each of the nodes we request from GraphQL can be individually identified so that they can fit into this normalization system, right? We need to know that a configurable product has this ID that corresponds to this particular set of data so that Apollo can get a cache hit as often as possible. Previously, this was pretty difficult in some cases because sometimes the data we get back from GraphQL doesn't have those IDs and we're left on our own to construct those sort of on the fly. But with Apollo version 3, we have the ability to do this in a single location through type policies. So what we're starting to populate the app with now are many more cases where we are helping hint to Apollo how to identify each of the nodes we get back from Magento's GraphQL. And what this does is that no matter how you're shaping your queries, so even if your queries don't match ours, it recognizes type by type how to individually identify objects that it receives and insert them into the cache. And in more complicated cases where what it gets back are an array of things that are hard to identify, such as applied gift cards, payment methods, prices, shipping addresses, right? Or really complex things such as customer addresses, we can keep all of the logic for individually identifying these things in a single place and help you get way more cache hits, which makes application experience much, much better for your shoppers. When we go to page 2 here, it's going to hit the network, it's going to show a loading spinner, it's going to get more data, and it's going to come back and give us the second page. But when we go back to the first page, it's instant because Apollo knows it has that data in cache. Those cache hits are the most valuable caching we have. So the Apollo 3 upgrade is going to be absolutely massive for the end shopper experience in terms of how many cache hits they get and how quickly they can navigate around the site. Not to mention, once it's in Apollo's cache, it's available offline. So that's yet more things that they'll be able to do offline. So that's my whirlwind tour of what I think are the 3 coolest new features coming that we've added in the last couple of months. These are really deep topics, and we'd love to talk about them more with anybody who has experience in these areas or questions in these areas. So please attend the Dev Exchange after this one, or come back at us on Slack or through GitHub, and we'll be happy to dive into any of these subjects and explain more or take suggestions for improvements. And with that, back to you, Eric.
Great, thanks, Jimmy. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how to get started. So again, kind of going into this with an audience that may be really familiar with what we do, but also less familiar. Let's say half and half. Want to provide a couple resources on how you might get started. So everything starts at pwastudio.io. QR code right here will get you started and start to take a look at some of the tutorials that Jimmy had shared, both at various levels, really. And so, if you're new to PWA Studio, even if you're new to React, even someone who's just getting going on things, with our shared sandbox, with Code Sandbox, etc., you can get them, and it's just a matter of minutes, right? And so, if you take a look at what we have here, we are providing a couple overviews, though. So the overview itself on headless, it's provided right here. GraphQL, again, there's coverage that happens every single Magento release. And then Studio itself, the roadmap is public, right? And there are quite a few resources, both with what we've provided on DevDocs, as well as Magento U, and even our partners as well. So partners are getting up-trained every day with the help of our community. And then last but not least, the release notes. So we talked a little bit about 2.4.1 that's coming in a couple weeks, but 2.4 was a big deal when it comes to PWA Studio and PWA Studio 8. We pride ourselves quite a bit on, again, not only what we've done, but how we've done it. We are incredibly accessible, so if you have any questions, let's definitely make some time to talk here at the event, but also find us on Slack and other channels as well for that one. So with that, let's open up to any questions either via chat or otherwise, and then we can wrap up. let's see if there's any questions here. Good, good, good. New to React. So Jimmy, it looks like there's a question on the ability to preload pages in a browser cache. Is there a way for us to do that?
Yeah, definitely. So if we look at it, there are a bunch of cases in the app, right, where we have links on the page that you could preload, right? That you can access those pages, right, through the service worker, and cache and have the response waiting in cache for when the user actually clicks on the link, so that they don't have to load everything on the fly, right? And that will speed things up a little bit faster. That said, right, that's something that you generally want to do pretty carefully, right? Because the more you preload, the more the browser is working in the background, the more data you're loading, right, which you may not need. So really, we don't turn it on ourselves because it's one of those things that you're going to want to use heuristics to carefully tune for how your site has it set up, right? So it's going to depend on your final design, right? You kind of want to be respectful of what's going on the user's device, right, and what their network connection is. But generally speaking, it's very easy through the service worker to say, here are 6 URLs for the top results of the page, right, of the search result or the category. And yeah, we're going to preload those, put those in cache, and save 1 round trip. Yeah, that's a very good question.
Yep. David says thank you. Good. Couple other questions, mostly just comments. I think it sounds like everybody's happy with the session. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces from the community, which is always good to see, even virtually here, many of which have contributed in some fit or fashion. Lars has mentioned, and Lars has been great lately with a lot of new content on extensibility. And so if you're interested in seeing some of those concepts and demos, I feel like Lars is doing something almost every other day. And so take a look at the link he's provided there. He's one of our 2 maintainers, cares deeply about this, but also, I see Jordan and Lewis on there as well. And so Jordan and team have done some great work on server-side rendering. So SEO Snap's great. Mage2Gen is fantastic if you're interested in kind of automated code as it supports with GraphQL and PWA Studio. So definitely take a look at that. There's a lot there, and there's a lot that the community has done in support of that. And so for that, we're incredibly thankful. For those of us who've been doing this a long time, this is some of the best work, most interesting things that we've done in a long, long time, and the community is a very big part of that. So with that, again, kind of taking a look at any more questions, Jimmy, I think we're good for that. And so I think, again, we'll put a wrap on this one, and then we'll switch over to Dev Exchange. Again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us any way. We're pretty accessible. Join our Friday calls, learn React, take some of the training, the docs. It's probably easier to set up than you think. Even a product manager who hasn't developed in a couple years can get going in a couple minutes, which is a small claim to fame. But again, thank you again for your time. Thank you again for everything. This community continues to inspire us, and we wouldn't be here without you. So thanks again. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.